What I will say is this, and this is my hot take, unpopular opinion. In this moment, honoring the question that I heard you ask our good brother, I think it's Diante, is that right? Is that your name, brother? Diante? Yes. Our good brother, Diante. Based on the policy positions, our vice president doesn't have to articulate a single thing more to me for me to understand that she is the choice in this moment to defend democracy, to advance anti-Black policies, to advance anti-LGBTQ policies, to ensure that I will not have to exist under the trauma associated with the Trump administration. And so there's a part of me that just wants to be clear, and I've done a lot of reflection upon this. I know it is not popular. She should not have to articulate a single thing for those who understand the importance of voting in defense of democracy, or Black people, or queer people more generally, to move forward. That's how I enter this conversation.
Ooh, you know we're going to disagree on that.
And we can, but that's where we are. I want to be pragmatic. So I want y'all to know how I enter this.
But is that pragmatic, though? And I'll tell you, here's why.
It is. We got an election in less than 60 days. So we can talk about, again, in a way that I appreciate. I love both of, I'm talking about to my friends I know in real life, you, Marc, and you, Tiffany. I love both of you. I love both of you up in your work. But in this moment, and I've said to Tiffany outside of this space, there's something I'm missing. Let me know. This is not about.
Let me tell you why I disagree.
He's been consistent about that. He's been consistent.
There's two reasons why I disagree. Obviously, I disagree on principle, right?
Sure.
But as a pragmatic reason, there are a lot of voters who disagree with you. There are a lot.
But the reality is, we have an election that is
hear me out.
On a particular day.
Hear me
Marc,
out.
he said it was unpopular when he started his sentence.
But hear me out.
It said it was unpopular, but let's go. We double dutch it.
But hear me out. Just hear me out. What I'm saying though is, even if I agree with you wholeheartedly and say, forget the issues, let's just win now and figure it out later. Let's say I took that position. I'm saying that there are so many voters who will not vote for her unless they hear a principled position on Israel.
So now let me just finish this part of it, which is that this is my frustration. So I understand righteous indignation around, we need to talk about a third party candidate. I understand people who are radical around genocide and will name Gaza. Maybe they'll name the Sudan. But what I also know is two things in this moment. We are not as critical of the Democratic Party as we are the Republican Party. What I know is that people who are righteous with all of their rage do not have the same questions in this moment around these issues, fracking, border policies, and military, as we do the Republican candidate. It is not the same. And in a world where I would love to, again, we got a dream, Afrofuturism, what is possible without the tainting of white supremacy? Let's talk about third party possibilities. But in this moment, there is an election that is going to be certified on a particular date. And what I know is that we are past the uncommitted moment. So I said to, again, Tiffany, tell me if I'm out of line. But a previous conversation, I said to my sister, if I'm missing something, let me know. But if you decide I got it in the primary, I'm uncommitted in the primary, I need to hear her say this thing. I need to hear the party move in this way. The challenge is in this moment, pragmatically, is we are not in the primary, we're in the general. There's an election that's going to happen. If you don't vote for her, one more thing. You're effectively voting for him. And what I also know is, particularly around the border, around military, and around Palestine, we don't have the same energy for that nigga who we know is not about democracy or Black people generally. So I'm not willing to equivocate around if we have the same energy for her, we might get to a different place. I can disagree with her. I can argue with her. I cannot have a conversation with him. He does not want me to exist. And that for me is the line. It's not about a policy issue. I don't have the luxury of being a single voter issue. This for me is about pragmatism in the purest sense of the word.
I'm just saying, like, I'm looking right now at 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, where Jill Stein has 40% of Muslim voters in Michigan, compared to 12% who say they plan to vote for Harris. And in Michigan, that's not a small number. In Wisconsin, 44% compared to 39% for Harris. And in Arizona, 35-29. I'd yield. There's probably not that. I mean, there's more Muslims in Arizona than you might think, but not as. It's probably not a number that will shift the needle. All I'm saying is that even if I take your position, and I likely will vote the same way you're going to vote for the same reason, but my point is there are voters who will vote for her if she says something different tonight. There are voters who will say
and there are voters who will not vote for her because she's going to say that thing. In this
100%, 100%.
She's in a lose-lose situation.
Let me bring Tiffany in and then Diante. Where I'm going is just how much of what I want to think through is how much of the calculation, Tiffany, do you think is her saying, look, this is where I am on fracking. I'm not as progressive as y'all are on fracking. Like you said, she's not a progressive person. Look, I
said she's not a radical person. I
not radical. You said radical. Forgive me. I would say she's not a progressive. I'd say she's a liberal. But without getting into the semantics,
and these terms don't matter. These terms don't matter to the niggas in the barbershop.
I'm with you.
The distinction between progressive and
my barbershop is sophisticated, David.
But I'll tell you, and I'm there tomorrow.
Here's what does matter in my barbershop.
The distinction is not a difference.
Well, one at a time, y'all. One at a time, y'all. Here's what matters in my barbershop. I will say, is reparations, a conversation on reparations, something we didn't talk about tonight, right? What does matter is, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but there are a lot of people in my barbershop who care about her, how she talks about her own blackness, how she identifies.
Which she did not answer that question.
She didn't answer that question either.
But when I regard,
David, hold on, David. It's okay. Hold on.
I'm not saying she should or shouldn't. I'm simply talking.
She should have.
I'm just saying, and Tiffany, I want to hear your response to it. Again, I'm not saying she shouldn't have to dignify it, but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, to David's point, she is making choices that are going to make some voters say yes and other voters say no. I'm wondering. I'm thinking how much of tonight was about the calculation, and how much of it was this is just how I see things.
Well, this is the first time we have seen her. Again, I keep going back to this is the first time we have seen her because it is the first time we've seen her in a debate as somebody running for president in a race against Donald Trump, not as a primary candidate. There were other issues, Mark, that I want to lift up. I did not hear anybody tonight talk about the cost of living in terms of rent, which is extremely, extremely high in every metropolitan city across the country, which is why exactly I moved from Los Angeles to Atlanta, because it's just a little bit cheaper. Folks did not talk about voting rights and talking about a little bit cheaper, but it is cheaper. Voting rights. They talked about how we need to protect democracy. And many of the folks that I organize with, whether that be workers in the labor movement or whether that be students on college campuses across the country, feel like our democracy right now is in shambles anyway, as it already exists. And we did not hear anybody else advance or thank you, baby K, the rent is too damn high. And so we didn't hear anybody else talk about how it is. And we didn't hear anybody else talk about how we need to advance voting rights and we need to protect voting rights and we need to expand voting and make universal voting. I think we didn't hear any radical policies in that nature. We didn't hear anything about education. There was some side conversations about student loan debt and people pointing fingers about who was going to get canceled and who wasn't going to get canceled. We heard no issues whatsoever about education, teachers, pay wages, whether it was gun violence. We just had a shooting last week here in Atlanta where 4 people were shot and killed and 9 people were injured. We did not hear anything about the death penalty by a white boy, thank you, but death penalty, reparations, or jobs at all. We heard about industrial jobs, and Sean Fain keeps getting a shout out, and I feel like one day the brother needs to run for president. UAW is really doing their thing because they're taking up a lot of space. I think Sean Fain should run for president.
Oh. I thought you said Sean King, and I was like, I had to hear you wrong. Go ahead.
She did not say that.
I said Sean Fain. I said Sean Fain, and I'm going to leave that there. We're never going to talk about Sean King, brother. Okay, whatever. So I'm Sean Fain.
Sean King. I just didn't think that was coming out your mouth.
Well, I said Sean Fain, who is the president of the United Auto Workers. For those who don't know, UAW. I can't even. David, move. Okay, so. And I needed to hear a different position on Palestine. And so there were issues that were missing. To your question, Mark, about whether or not the calculations were correct, I understand, David, what you are saying. 100%. I do. And I heard you when we was on the last call, and I heard you when we talked about it one-on-one. I understand what you are saying. I also believe, as an organizer, in multiple subjects of issues that affect people of color and communities of color and low-income people, that we need to continue to have people who are always demanding more and better. Yes, we have less than 60 days, but we have to continue to pull people in a direction so that Kamala Harris says the right thing eventually, or so that when we end up having a meeting with her, because she will take a meeting with us, unlike Donald Trump, that we will be able to have a disciplined and dignitary conversation with her to move her on
Wait,
on our
run that
issues,
back.
hopefully. What was the quote? I
Sorry,
was
run
talking,
that
I
back.
didn't read it.
Somebody just named me in the comment. Run that back so I can actually analyze it and respond to it.
Oh, shoot.
I want to be clear.
I'll bring it up
received
for
what
you.
you
I'll make sure.
Okay, let me finish what I'm saying. Bring it up. Oh, well, David about to cuss somebody out in the comments, so I just need to pause. But anyway, so what happens is, and I got your back because they better not talk shit about you. But I want to be very clear that like the closing statements. We'll talk about the wait. Don't
Don't get
respond.
distracted by the comments, y'all. Keep rolling.
Wait a minute.
Keep rolling.
Let me keep saying what I'm saying.
Okay,
I
Kanye.
was very disappointed, Mark, to hear both closing statements talk so deeply and so proudly about enforcing and having the largest military of arms in the entire world and funding the military and being scared about weaponry and being scared about World War III and et cetera. I want to name that Donald Trump continued to lie on the stage tonight, and the moderators did a really great job of fact checking him. Ain't nobody eating no dogs nowhere, first of all, and ain't nobody killing babies after babies have been born. And Donald Trump did not acknowledge that and continued to come off the microphone and try to tell people he saw it on the television. This is not who needs to be the president, but I am naming that her calculations at this moment in this debate didn't need to be how many people am I going to win, because she still needs to do that in the next 60 days. This first debate was, is she different from Donald Trump, and can she be presidential, and does she have a plan, and does she have an agenda? And the answer to all of those questions is yes tonight.
Diante, let me bring you in. By the way, y'all, if y'all see me drinking, it's because I'm thirsty.
USSA!
If you see me drinking from this glass, it's because I'm thirsty. If you see me from this one, it's because Dave is wearing me out. So it just depends on if it's this cup, it's we having problems. If it's this one, I'm just thirsty. Diante, let me bring you in here. I want to ask you some Trump questions, but you
Catherine from New Jersey
have an opportunity to respond to what was previously stated. Again, I'm going to give you more time because there's fewer of you than others. I want to be fair. Go ahead.
So the first thing I want to say is, I mean, I responding to Kamala Harris doesn't have to respond or doesn't have to explain her policy, to explain her position. That's the most politically ignorant conversation I've ever heard, because
Bitch, you tried it. You fucking tried it.
This is
ignorant. No, you will not. Ignorant is a charged term, and you will not on this platform disrespect me as a person who said it. I have worked for this government. I have defended our country. You are out of fucking line, you Mr. Republican. You fucking grifter. You fucking tried it.
The second thing is
okay. I'm shutting this down for a second. We're gonna take a 30-second break. We're gonna have David's muted right now. Actually, we're not gonna take a break. David's muted right now. David, you're muted right now. They're not gonna hear you right now. We're going to.
He don't care that he's muted, baby. He gonna talk.
All right, so we're going to
disrespect David.
We're going to pause, and I really want us to have this conversation because I want to get into some substantive issues here. We're starting to get there. We're going to not engage in the ad hominems. We're not going to name call. We're not going to curse at each other. We're going to be respectful. Dave is right now either pointing to his degrees or Compton. I'm not sure which one. But let's pick up. We're gonna try one more time. Otherwise, the next person who uses profanity, we're gonna have to pull you out of the room. I want to have a good conversation.
We can't cuss, Mark. No cussing.
You know, we can. I mean, generally, when I say we can cuss, I mean like we can cuss like, damn, that shit was crazy, not like at each other.
Got it. Okay.
Not in a harmful way. And it's not just cussing. To David's point, we're not going to call each other ignorant. We're not going to call each other any of these things. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Now, since Diante, we're going to pick back up where you came from. We're all going to exhale. We're all going to have an analysis here. Diante, you were saying.
So I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think if we look at the political map, and when I have conversations with individuals on the left, and when I have conversations with moderates, is that we have to understand what's important to who. When we look at Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, people are on the fence. They need to hear from both candidates on what it is that these candidates are supporting. And this is something that is not just a issue that we see amongst Democrats, we see it amongst Republicans all the time. I remember in the Republican primary, Ron DeSantis thought that he was going to run just because he was different than Donald Trump, but his policies were horrible. And so what you have to explain that. And I think that far too many times politicians run thinking, well, I don't have to explain this. I don't have to, everybody knows who I am. This person is more evil and I don't have to explain why. So I think that's really the issue that I see. But also when we look at, Tiffany, you mentioned a lot of the policy when it comes to rent, when it comes to utilities, when it comes to, and neither candidate mentioned it. Neither candidate mentioned what's happening when it comes to education. I know in Pennsylvania, education is a very critical issue. School choice and charter schools, that's a major issue in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, two targeted states. In Michigan, the UAW, that's a major point. That's a major position for the folks in Michigan and the Midwest. And so, we didn't hear a lot of those points. We didn't hear a lot of those.
Let me push you on that a little bit.
I agree with that.